I have some great news to tell. You see, I was out and about jaywalking just as usual when I found this dime, and it got me thinking about all the things in this world that are pointless. Now before I find one of those in a mirror, I'm going to try to find one in a box, preferably something on the Wii that I can play. This checks out. Wii Play is a game that exists. Out of all verbs, this one describes the game the best. This game was pretty big back in my day when I was breaking my teeth on Legos. Everyone had this game. If you don't believe me, check the best-selling games of all time list, and you're bound to see it standing right next to its exact opposite. Now you might ask, what kind of people in 2007 thought this was an acceptable way to live? Well, for one, you'd be stupid not to buy it. It came with a whole spanking Wii remote for just $10 more than the Wii remote at retail price. At that point, if you just needed another Wii remote, you can go ahead and waste another $10 that it might eventually show you that you didn't just buy the Wii for virtual bowling. I can't say that about the Virtual Boy. Also, the Wii was an absolute menace to economies and fragile TVs everywhere because no one ever thought this was possible. To all of the hip uncles who knew just how fun Wii golf was, Billiards was a no-brainer. And Grandpa fought in World War II. He loved tanks. As for this game's development, it's Wii Play. It's a concoction of minigames that showed off the power of the Wii, or lack thereof it. There were a collection of tech demos that were put out there as an example of what the Wii could do. The sports ones were put into Wii Sports, the music ones were put into Wii Music, and the others took refuge in Wii Play because I don't know where else Pose Mii could have gone aside from Purgatory. This game was part of the Wii series, games that all utilized the Wii remote in unique ways, and Wii Chess. On a list of things I want to do before I'm dead and buried, talking about every game in this series is right up there with finding a mate. I don't know which one of those is going to be harder to accomplish. But one thing to note is that the game is apparently not that good according to critics at the time of the game's release. And to that, you got this game with a Wii remote as a bonus. The game was only $10 on its own. I think it's fair to say the quality won't be as high as a traditional first-party Nintendo published game. Maybe Odama, but that's pushing it. But maybe I'm just talking up the game for nothing, because I haven't put this thing in my Wii for years. So these guys might be onto something. But I refuse to believe that. I'm going to go for this entire package so I can actually decipher this game's true value. It should have been $9. So this game starts out like any of the all-time greats, with the title screen. Personally, I'm not exactly a fan of this title, but I also don't know what else they would have called it, and my lawyer wouldn't pick up, so there's nothing I can do about it anyway. On to the main selection of games. We have to start from the bottom with Shooting Range. You make our way up the totem pole by getting to Wii Tanks. But first, I can fondle with my Mii. Why wasn't this on the back of the box? While I'm having a fit about not being French, it also reminds me that there's an actual game inside this thing. I thought this was Saturn. So first up, Shooting Range, where you can shoot things and not much else. Nothing here is all too special, you just point and shoot, something my psychiatrist told me not to do. It's split up into 5 stages. The only one that grabbed my attention was the UFO one, because look at the Mii's run, this was the pinnacle of comedy to me. But this game shows up front that instead of being focused on the motion, fitness, or satanic abilities of the Wii remote, this game uses the pointer for most of its games, which I'm fine with. I only look like a little bit of a crackhead while doing it. As for Shooting Range, it might be one of the most bare bones things Nintendo has ever done, but I commend it for its arcade nature and the simple pleasure of shooting a can of Wii. In terms of Wii Play minigames I've played so far, this is the best one. Now it's time to kick it up a notch with Find Me. This might be unimpressive, but so am I, so I can relate. Aside from comedic value, this minigame isn't good for much. All you have to do is find the specified Mii's and proofread your will. That's the whole game. It never gets interesting, and it barely ever shakes things up. This might be the first game I think of when the topic of Wii Play comes across in conversation, but that doesn't say anything about its overall quality. Just because the Mii's can be found in space doesn't mean I'm gonna bow down to this game, but the escalator made me consider it. I could play this game for about 5 minutes at the most before I started to question, why am I playing this? I wish there was more to say about this game, but it's Find Me. In other words, not as good as Shooting Range. Next up is Table Tennis, and I loved this game in Wii Sports Resort. It was so quick and fluid, easily one of the best minigames in the package. Now with Wii Play, this is bad. I just don't feel like this is a good fit for the game. Both Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort have their own takes on tennis, which is logically played by shaking the Wii remote. This doesn't feel natural. Pointing at the screen to play just doesn't work. I usually clocked out after 3 or 4 rallies, and I think the one time I got 16 was just a fluke. This is my least favorite game of the collection, by a country mile. Sure, Shooting Range might be bare bones, and Pose Mii has less of a purpose than anything their human race has ever done, but this is just bad. The controls don't feel right, it's far too repetitive for its own good, and there are better iterations of it in other games. This game deserves its spot. If I can dog on a table tennis minigame, who knows what else I'm capable of doing. Pose Mii is funny. This is the most blah game in the package, but it's easily one of the most memorable to me. I'm saying this from my experience with the game. Ask anyone on the street what this is and prepare to be shunned. This is far from the most in-depth game, but I find it to be extremely replayable. The fast pace of trying to squeeze your Mii into a bubble by contorting your hand and twisting the Wii remote in just the nick of time makes me feel alive. To anyone looking in from the window, this looks stupid. I didn't say it wasn't, but this game can get pretty crazy sometimes, flip-flopping around through different poses, flying across the screen. It only makes me slightly embarrassed to say that I think this is one of the best games in the collection, even though that isn't a very high bar to pass. But to me, this game hits a line between utter nonsense and high school adrenaline. This placement is well deserved. Laser hockey is alright, but it's literally just air hockey, now brought to you by the magic of the sensor bar. This and table tennis feel like they took no time to put together, but at least air hockey had the common decency of being somewhat fun. I do think the puck lacks a lot of momentum though. I take a step back and hit it with all I've got and it looks like I just gave it a love tap. Maybe it's because I'm the combined weight of 2 pencils. If there's anything I remember this game for, the visuals are a little fun to look at. It just doesn't really look like it fits in with all of this, but it's probably the only reason why I find it more memorable than Pong. But I do think if I played this in multiplayer, I would have a lot more fun with it, and we all know why that isn't an option. But there weren't any Mii's on escalators, so we all know where this is going. Billiards. It's Billiards. I don't know what I was expecting aside from happiness. This is no-nonsense Billiards, meaning that this is one of the best games in the collection. My weekend is saved! This game invokes the same energy that Wii Golf does in the sense that while it might have slow gameplay, it's one of the sports that gets you to really think about your next move. In Shooting Range, if I see a duck, I know what I need to do. I just know whenever I'm having a bad day or I just experienced the pain of childbirth, this game will always have my back. It might not be the best thing ever invented because Pez dispensers exist, but this game never gets old and it is one of the most relaxing wastes of time I have ever had. And my face is on the cue ball. I can't begin to contain my excitement. Fishing. I like this one. It kind of reminds me of the Rainbow Fish book. It was one of the most memorable books from my childhood. I read it once. I know I said Billiards was the most relaxing game in the package, and it is, but I find it to be more of a methodical kind of relaxation. This is relaxing in a different way, probably because of the small fry. The game is a bit more fast-paced, and there are a few more things to keep in mind, like the current bonus or the bane of my existence. Or maybe I'm biased. I got the king of the pawn. This game clearly has its favorites. But I can always pop this game in and know I'm gonna have a pretty good time, although it isn't that replayable to me. And when I do play it, I only wish I was playing Billiards a bit more. Charge. Tell me something I don't know. Charge with an exclamation point. Did you say riding on a knitted cow? This one never made all that much sense to me. You'd think anything would fit in a minigame collection called We Play. But no, I'm not gonna sit here and say it's a bad game. I don't have any plans for crucifixion today. But this is the only game here that doesn't use the Wii Remote's pointer, which is what the whole collection was kind of made for. I think this would have been a much better fit for Wii Fit, and you could shift your weight in different directions to control it. This game would have been fine with just 8 minigames, but throw Charge in there. Nobody will notice it anyway. As for the game itself, you tilt the Wii Remote up, down, and all around to tackle a bunch of scarecrows in a line. Even though I have my criticisms as to why it's here, I have to admit it's pretty fun. It's no masterpiece, and the amount of content on offer is nothing through the roof, but it's a decently addictive high school romp that I can see myself playing again. And for that, I think it's about the middle of the road in terms of what We Play can offer, with one side being this and the other being this. I see this as a nice middle ground, and it'll get what it deserves. Tanks is the best minigame in We Play. No, it isn't. Tanks with an exclamation point is the best minigame in We Play. Now that's something I can get behind. This is a delight of a minigame, probably because it feels the most like an actual game. Something about the controls and difficulty goes so well with what I want in a minigame. And it's pretty in-depth, having dozens of stages with increasing difficulty as you go along. As you start going further, they start adding more interesting obstacles and tanks, and I like that. They could have done the bare minimum and just made 5 stages like with Shooting Range, but this is the one minigame that seems to have the most thought in its design. At its core, you just move around and shoot tanks. It doesn't look that fun, but after I got into it, I really got into it. I'm sorry, Pose Mii, but you've been dethroned. And that was We Play. It was just okay. The thing is, most of the games in this aren't that bad. Even the more simple ones have their charm, except for table tennis. Games like fishing, tanks, and even Pose Mii show that this game had a lot of potential. I just wish there was more to do in some of these games. The only one that I thought had a decent amount of stuff was tanks, even though Pose Mii is a personal favorite of mine. But does all of this truly equate to a 58 on Metacritic? Or I think I finally figured out how that happened. They didn't add an exclamation point in the title.